The member for O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I rise today to speak in support of the Custom Amendment Korea Australian Free Trade Agreement Implementation Bill of 2014 and highlight some of the tremendous opportunities this agreement presents for the farmers, fishermen and miners in my electorate of O'Connor. Past policies of high tariff protection for our manufacturing industries has generally disadvantaged our primary production sector, which has borne the brunt of restricted access to key markets across the globe. The move to reduce tariff protection, begun by the Hawke government in the mid-1980s, which I hasten to add had full cooperation of the coalition, has transformed our economy, allowing efficient industries to thrive and prosper, while those unable to compete on the global stage have fallen by the wayside. Unfortunately, many previous trade liberalisation agreements have focused on manufactured products, with many of our trading partners choosing to protect their domestic primary industries. As we all know, Mr Deputy Speaker, Australian farmers and miners are the best in the world and have long waited for the opportunity to compete on a level playing field, particularly into our key Asian markets. The bill before us today represents a major breakthrough, especially for farmers, horticulturalists and viticulturalists across my electorate. And while I will outline in detail the specific tariff reductions and how they will benefit producers, it would be remiss of me not to mention the father of the free trade movement, a former member for Wakefield, known universally and affectionately as the modest member, Charles Robert Bert Kelly. Bert Kelly was the strongest advocate in the federal parliament during the 1960s and 70s for the principles of free trade, particularly lower tariffs, reduced government regulation and increased economic liberalism. This was an era of strong protectionist policies, and Bert Kelly was almost a lone voice with occasional support from predominantly West Australian farmers and miners. One of those West Australian farmers was John Hyde, the member for Moore between 1974 and 1983, and still active today promoting dry economic policies, an expression he coined and made his own. In his foreword to the book The Modest Member, John says that Bert Kelly used the opportunities afforded by his office to win public opinion for economic management that was efficient, mindful of the future, and did not give a privileged few the capacity to raise prices above competitive levels at the expense of many. A fine set of principles for any member of this place to live by. In a happy coincidence, one of Bert Kelly's three sons, Tony, and his wife Dawn, farm at Mount Barker in my electorate, and I'm sure that they and many other farmers, horticulturalists and viticulturalists will finally enjoy the benefits of this CAFTA, as well as other free trade agreements that are, in part, Bert Kelly's legacy to us all. I'm certain that Bert would have been very proud of the tireless efforts by Minister Andrew Robb and the staff at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in securing this agreement, which will substantially liberalise Australia's trade with South Korea. Formal discussions between our two governments began in 2009 and concluded in May 2014, when the Australia-Korea Free Trade Agreement was tabled in Parliament after signing by the Honourable Andrew Robb and his South Korean counterpart, the Minister for Trade, Industry and Energy, Mr Yoon Sang-jik, on the 8th of April 2014 in Seoul, South Korea. The governments of both Australia and Korea aim for this agreement to enter into force in 2014. Korea is currently Australia's third largest export market and our fourth largest trading partner. The implementation of this agreement will significantly boost Australia's position in this major market, where other competitors already have preferential access. The United States, the European Union and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations are already benefiting from their respective FTAs with Korea, and Chile, Canada and New Zealand are close to concluding their own agreements. Goods liberalisation alone is estimated to be worth nearly $5 billion in additional GDP to Australia between 2015 and 2030. On entry into force, 84% of Australia's exports by value to South Korea will enter duty-free, rising to 99.8% on full implementation of CAFTA. This agreement contains simplified and trade facilitative rules of origin and related documentary requirements. Goods imported into Australia that meet the rules of origin implemented through this bill will be entitled to claim preferential tariff treatment in accordance with the agreement. The amendments include relevant obligations on Australian producers and exporters wanting to export Australian goods and obtain preferential treatment for those goods in South Korea. This agreement reflects Australia's close bilateral economic relations with South Korea. My electorate of O'Connor stands to benefit tremendously from the proposed tariff reductions and, in many cases, complete elimination of customs duty on many of the agricultural products and mineral resources we export to Korea. Likewise, business in O'Connor will realise substantial cost savings on certain imported Korean products vital to our mining and agricultural sector, such as heavy machinery, diesel motor vehicles and tyres. My constituents throughout the electorate stand to benefit from more affordable Korean imports, such as telephones, televisions and computer monitors, as well as tyres, motor vehicles and refined petroleum. With respect to exports, O'Connor is blessed with an incredible mineral wealth. Our iron ore, nickel and gold exports make a substantial portion of the $16 billion worth of energy and mineral products Australia exports to Korea. Whilst a large proportion of these mineral resources already enter Korea duty-free, there persists a tariff of up to 8% on some resources, including gold. CAFTA will result in the elimination of the remaining tariffs on all resource products over the next 10 years. My electorate of O'Connor is also one of Australia's largest agricultural electorates, producing cattle, sheep for the live and chilled meat export trade, as well as cereal, oilseeds, premium wine and horticultural produce. On full implementation of CAFTA, 99.8% of all Australian agricultural exports to Korea will have no tariffs. Tariffs of up to 300% will be eliminated on key agricultural produce such as beef, wheat, dairy, horticultural produce, seafood and wine. Although Australia's beef imports to Korea already account for over $640 million in export earnings, and we are the largest supplier of beef into this market, our main competitors, the United States, have a 5.5% advantage due to their 2012 free trade agreement with Korea. When in force, CAFTA will eliminate the current 40% tariff on Australian beef, 18% tariff on offal and 72% tariff on processed beef products over the next 15 years. This is great news for beef producers in my electorate who have already seen increasing demand following this year's announcement of a $1 billion contract between chilled meat producers V&V Walsh and China. Roger Fletcher, owner of Fletcher International Meat Processing Plant in Narrogin, an exporter of chilled meat, believes the growing sheep meat industry in Korea can only benefit from these tariff eliminations. As a sheep producer myself, it is heartening to see the 22.5% tariff on lamb will be eliminated over the next 10 years. The tariff on pork, which is currently 25%, will be eliminated over 5 to 15 years. And O'Connor's small but significant dairy industry also stands to benefit from growing duty-free dairy quotas, as well as the elimination of high tariffs on cheese, which is currently 36%, and butter, 89%, over 13 to 20 years. With respect to fisheries, the southern rock lobster industry, based on the south coast of my electorate, will benefit from the elimination of rock lobster tariffs of 20% over the next 3 years. O'Connor is also a productive grain growing region, with our Wheatbelt, Esperance and Great Southern regions producing over 50% of West Australia's wheat, barley, oats and canola. Korea will eliminate its 1.8% tariff on wheat and 8% tariff on wheat gluten immediately the CAFTA enters into force. Korea will also provide a growing duty-free quota for malt and malting barley, and over the next 15 years eliminate their high out-of-quota tariffs of 269% and 513% respectively. Tariffs on canola oil, currently 8 to 30%, will be eliminated over 5 to 15 years. The horticultural food bowl of my electorate surrounds the town of Manjimup and produces a large variety of fruit and vegetables for export. Many of these horticultural products will enter Korea duty-free on entry into force of CAFTA. Tariffs on premium produce such as asparagus, which can be as high as 54%, will gradually be phased out over 3 to 10 years. Counter-seasonal demand will result in the high tariffs on produce such as chipping potatoes of up to 304% being eliminated during their off-season that coincides with our export season. WA produces some of the cleanest, disease and residue-free potatoes in Australia, which are very much in demand overseas. Potato growers in the Pemberton area, such as Dom Dellavedova and his neighbour, the Bendotti exporters, who process potatoes grown for export, stand to benefit tremendously from any tariff relief. The farmers of my electorate are not alone in their support of CAFTA. The National Farmers Federation view is that This agreement will provide millions of dollars in export value to Australian farmers, including those in the red meat, grains, dairy, sugar, pork and horticultural sectors. The agreement recognises agriculture as one of the nation's export strengths and will open opportunities for the sector in Korea. The wine-growing regions in the Great Southern, Franklin, Mount Barker, Cranbrook and Pemberton are currently subject to a tariff on 15% on all sparkling white and red wines, whilst their Chilean, American and European counterparts enter Korea duty-free. On the entry of CAFTA into force, Korea will immediately eliminate all tariffs on imported Australian wine. I personally would hope this would lead to an immediate rallying of our wine industry, which has seen a decline of wine exports into Korea of more than 30% since 2007. One of my constituents, Kim Tyra of Gallifrey Wines in Mount Barker, currently exports premium wine to China and names Korea as a perfect market for their particular calibre wine. The hip, young, educated Korean apparently loves a cool, red climate red wine, and tariff elimination will even the playing field with major players like the US, EU and Chile. When it comes to imports, up to 86% of our current imports from Korea will enter Australia duty-free when the CAFTA enters into force, and this will increase to 100% within 8 years. For O'Connor, this means immediate tariff removal on some types of agricultural and mining equipment, which are currently subject to an import duty of between 4 to 5%. Australia-wide, small to medium-sized petrol vehicles and medium-sized diesel-powered off-road vehicles will have their 5% tariff abolished on entry into force of CAFTA. Larger petrol passenger and off-road vehicles, as well as larger diesel-fuelled vehicles, will have their 4 to 5% tariff gradually reduced over 3 years. Importation of new tyres will be subject to immediate removal of the 5% tariff, while retread tyres will have their 5% tariff eliminated over 5 years in equal stages. Independent modelling suggests the Korean agreement will be worth $5 billion in additional income to Australia over the next 15 years, after which it will provide an annual boost to the economy of $653 million per annum. By 2030, agricultural exports to Korea are projected to be 73% higher than without the free trade agreement. Mining exports will be 17% higher than otherwise. And it is projected that CAFTA will create over 15,000 jobs between 2015 and 2030. For my electorate, these are all huge gains that everyone in O'Connor should be able to reap some benefit from. Finally, Mr Deputy Speaker, I'd like to reiterate my earlier thanks and congratulations to Minister Andrew Robb and the hard-working staff at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade for their tireless efforts in bringing this Australia Free Trade Agreement to a conclusion, and I commend the bill to the House.
I thank the member for O'Connor. The question now is that the amendment be agreed to, and I call the member for Bendigo.